I'm doing good.
Are we live, or we got to do something with these things?
There's somebody in the back.
Yeah, they'll figure it out.
He said they'll all be on.
But yeah, I'm with you on the personalized learning thing. I don't think a lot of people necessarily get it, that it's, and I tell people, sometimes personalized learning is exactly how we're teaching them today. And for some kids, it really works.
People don't understand differentiation or individualization.
Yes.
And some call it customized learning, or self-paced or student-led.
And Keith, you've got your...
It's all generally,
but we don't want it to be done before it starts by calling it personalized.
You want me to test it? Yep.
Oh, okay.
I really like that slide that you did. Is that your slide? Yeah, isn't that cool?
Good morning, everyone. So I was a half an hour early, 30 minutes ago. Hopefully folks have had a chance to grab some coffee. Please eat the food that's back there. And I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to welcome everyone. I'm Karen Richardson. I am the Executive Director of the Virginia Society for Technology and Education. We are so excited about hosting this leadership event today. We are partnering with the Virginia Department of Education. This was an opportunity to provide a day directed to people just like you. I, of course, would love for you to come to the VSTE conference, which is December 4th, 5th, and 6th in Virginia Beach. Early bird registration is open right now. But what we heard from folks like you was you're sort of digging through this 3 days of 250 breakout sessions, trying to find the one or two that was meant for you. So what we've decided to do is host a day where every session is meant for you. If you haven't taken a look at the schedule, you have a printed copy. You, of course, are more than welcome to use the online app. We've tried to identify various strands of technical, instructional, and so forth. One of our real goals with this day is to foster conversation as well. So you'll notice that many of the sessions are panels. We've tried to pull in several different people from across the state who are addressing the issue, whether it's digital equity or infrastructure issues. But please go to those sessions ready to ask questions, ready to share what you're doing in your school division. I invited people that I knew about, but I want to also hear from folks across the state. This is really your opportunity to connect and learn with people like you from across the state. We have folks from all the way down in Southwest, my Wise County in Washington. I think Giles County's here. We've got folks from Northern Virginia, even a few Tidewater people, although Bill Johnson is very sorry from Virginia Beach, but he's still without power and kind of underwater. So send out some good vibes to them as they pull out from Hurricane Matthew. But again, welcome today. And please take advantage. Just a couple little, well, we'll do the logistics at the end. How about that? Because I really want to get started on our panel here. So VSTE, in addition to being the state ISTE affiliate, several years ago became the state COSIN affiliate. The Consortium of School Networking has been around for at least 3 decades. And again, it's an organization really designed for folks like you. Division level leadership. They're doing all sorts of work around closing the homework gap, around, I'm going to miss all sorts of things, so I would encourage you today to make sure that you get to meet Keith Kruger. Keith is the CEO of COSIN. We're so excited that he was able to come down today, and he's got a couple sessions on things that COSIN are doing. There is the CETL certification program, and there's several folks in the room who are CETL certified if you want to learn more about what that means. He also has a general session on what COSIN can offer your school division. We were just talking about Section 508. I know a few of you have gotten the letter. They're going to be putting out some resources related to that in a couple of weeks as well. So please make sure that you connect with Keith today, whether your school division already belongs to COSIN or you're starting to think that now is the time to join. So we're excited to have him here. VSTE COSIN Council is the group that is in charge of the leadership planning for today, but also we hold monthly webinars on the fourth Thursday of each month. How do you find out about all this stuff? Go to VSTE.org. Click the Join Now link. It is a free membership. I believe Becky Fisher is always willing to pay for it for you, wherever Becky is in the room. But it is a free membership. Basically, it puts you on our mailing list so that you get a newsletter that keeps you up to date on everything that's going on. And we'll have a little COSIN corner coming up in the newsletter for you. The last thing I'd like to do today is I'm very excited because I think almost half of the VSTE Board of Directors are here. Will you all stand? Because if I try to say your names, I'm going to miss somebody, and then I'll be in big trouble. So everybody, there they are. So these are VSTE Board of Directors members. Let's give them a big round of applause. This is the governing body. They are elected by the VSTE membership, so one of the perks of being a VSTE member is you have the opportunity to vote for leaders like this. But again, connect with them today, talk to them about VSTE. Do you have some ideas for things we could do to help folks like you better? You're definitely an audience that we're interested in reaching out to, and so I'm hoping today will be a good day for you. So our opening panel is sort of where we are, where we're going. We've brought in leaders from across the state. Keith is going to be nice enough to moderate this for us, and I think each of the panel members are going to introduce themselves as well. So I'm going to get off the stage and get to the good meat of today. So thanks very much, Keith, and our panel, and knock yourselves out.
Great, thanks, Karen. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yeah. It's great to be here, and I really want to thank Karen and the VSTE organization and the council for making today's event possible. As we look around the country, having these kind of focused conversations of district technology leaders is so needed. Certainly, we need to have other forums that focus on teachers and classrooms and buildings, but at some point we have to have really a strategic conversation about what school districts need to do. How do we scale up, allow bubble-up innovation, but also create a culture of really making that happen. And as Karen said, COSN's been around for 25 years, and we're thrilled with this new partnership in Virginia. We've had a number of strong Virginia school districts as members for many years, but we're really trying to take it to the next level. And so today really signals to us a new, fresh opportunity to work with the State Department of Ed and others. So I really like the panel that Karen has pulled together. We have a perspective from a superintendent. We have the perspective from the State Department of Ed, and we have, in fact, the people, like most of the folks in the audience, the person who is what we would generically call the Chief Technology Officer. They have lots of different titles. In this case, the Director of Innovation and Learning. And what I've asked is each of the panelists, and I'll introduce them in just a moment, to kind of take 5 minutes and tell us sort of about their organization and what they're doing to really transform learning with technology. And I thought I would start off and sort of model that with, from COSN's perspective, kind of where we are. We've been at this for a long time, and to be very honest, it's a different moment, we think, than what it was 5 or 10 years ago. A lot of our time at that moment was about convincing school boards and superintendents that they should care about technology, and we got a lot of questions about the why. Those are still important questions, but we think there's been a fundamental shift in recent years, and that is more to the how. And that's because learning is becoming digital. And that is, we see that with all kinds of evidence. One of the things that COSN tries to do is to make sure that the human capacity really exists to really powerfully use technology. That's not to say that technical or technological challenges aren't important. They are, but they're trumped by the issue of people. I think of the old Pogo cartoon, I've seen the enemy and it is me, it is us. And so you being here today is really part of that. And what I've shown up here is our framework of essential skills. You see that in the center of it, we think technology has to be about advancing learning. And the inner wave, which is the one that's been around for a long time, is sort of the managing the technology, managing the network. And that continues to be an issue. That used to be 80% of the job of CIOs in all industry sectors. PricewaterhouseCoopers says that's now about 20 to 30%. So there's a big shift, and what's the shift is that second wave around education, the educational environment. How are we using technology to really make a difference? And the final wave is really around leadership and vision. How do you work with your superintendent, your school board, and all the others in the leadership team to really bake in and create a culture of innovation? And last week, I seem to have lost my image, but we issued annually we do a report called the Horizon Report. How many of you are familiar with that? not every hand. So we partner with a higher ed association called the New Media Consortium, or NMC, and they started out in the higher ed world putting out this report on emerging technologies for learning. And it's called the Horizon because they look in 3 horizons: the 1 year or less, the 2 to 3 year horizon, and the 4 to 5 year horizon. And they try to identify each year the most important technologies in each horizon. Because frankly, there's a lot changing and happening and new opportunities. And I'm showing up here one part of the report, which was just issued in September, the time adoption of a year or less, the trends around maker spaces and online learning. Actually, online learning's been going on for a long time, but for some reason it's never been on our hot trends. The issues of robotics and virtual reality and that kind of horizon, and out a little farther, consumer technologies like wearable technology or increasingly artificial intelligence. And if you go to cosin.org/horizon, you can download that report. You can also download a toolkit, and we'll talk about that later today, which is really about fostering a conversation. So there's a lot of really big, important things happening. There's also, for this audience, we need to make sure that the plumbing is there, that the infrastructure is. And we do an annual survey. I hope when you get it, you'll take part in it. We just closed it last week, and we're analyzing the data. So these are the 3 big takeaways from last year's survey on infrastructure. There's extremely high cost for bandwidth, for broadband. That was the #1 overwhelming challenge that district technology leaders said across the United States. Over 70% indicated that was their #1 problem around infrastructure. But it also is driving around speed and capacity, that what we had in the past of bandwidth being adequate to do the kind of when you had several students using one device, that uses different kinds of bandwidth than what we need today for ubiquitous. And also, there's just frankly a lack of competition, particularly in rural parts of the United States, and I know rural parts of Virginia. So those are the infrastructure challenges. We also think that the good news is we're on a path to get to ubiquity of broadband access and robust Wi-Fi. With the modernization of the E-rate, we've had a 60% increase in funding. We're going to get there. We're not there yet. We can't lose our perspective on getting it done. But it does beg the question, if we've really gone to digital learning, what happens when kids go home? Or as Karen mentioned, the homework gap. So we've been doing a lot on what we call digital equity, and hopefully that'll come up in today's conversation also. We also ask a slightly different question in our leadership survey of what are your top priorities? And interestingly enough, the #1 priority nationwide last year was broadband and network capacity. The second was wireless access, and the third was mobile learning. The interesting thing is that up the last 3 years, it's always been online assessments. So things have shifted a little bit. That doesn't mean that online assessments aren't important, but they aren't the #1 driving thing nationwide. And also, I just want to highlight one other thing that maybe will bubble up in this panel, and that is the issue of privacy. We asked district leaders whether or not there was less concern, the same concern, or more concern around the issue of handling of student data, and 64% more concern. That's a big change. So I'm going to be interested to hear from the different perspectives. And I see Jim Siegel in the back from Fairfax County, who's been a real leader in helping COSIN and others, districts around the country, think about that issue. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. We have, as I said, a superintendent, the head of technology at the Virginia Department of Ed, and one of our district technology leaders. And we're going to start with Superintendent Jared Cotton from Henry County Public Schools, who's going to tell us what's happening there.
Good morning.
I hope this is working.
It is.
All right, great. I'm Jared Cotton, proud to be the superintendent of Henry County Schools. If you're wondering where Henry County is, we're in rural Southwest Virginia. You can see us there at the bottom. If you know Bassett Furniture, Hooker Furniture, Stanley Furniture, all started there. And then a once vibrant community changed over time when all of those jobs went overseas. So we're a community that's rebounding. We are 66% free and reduced lunch. We have roughly 7,150 students. We are fortunate to have lots of great partnerships that are noted here. I'm proud to boast that we were the first certified work-ready community in Virginia, which is exciting because of our partnership and our work with our local businesses and our commitment to making sure that our students are career-ready. And that's something that we've been working on. But obviously, we partner with the community college as well as the museums in our area and other great partners, and we collaborate on a frequent basis with our local business partners. We've also received a lot of awards and acknowledgments, which we're very happy about. But as we continue to talk about, we're never done, and we keep working through. Most recently, we were, not this year, but last year, selected to be a part of Digital Promise, which has been a great opportunity for us to learn more from school divisions that are doing great things with technology. And of course, we have schools that are part of the New Tech Network, which I'll mention briefly. Really, our work with technology started long before I got there. Many of you know Janet Copenhaver, and who really spearheaded a lot of the great work in Henry County, in particular with iPads and one-to-one iPads in our schools. But we really focus on the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And we use technology as tools to bring these skills forward for our students and to enhance these skills. We want our students to be college, career, and citizenship ready. The importance of these 4 C's, as our local business partners said, this is what we value. If you can develop these skills in your students, we'll interview them and we'll hire them. And that's where our focus has been over the last several years. Just so that you know what kind of devices we have from a technology standpoint, we have one-to-one iPads in grades 3 through 8. All of our textbooks are digital for all of these grade levels, which is exciting. They don't have to carry those books home. We've implemented Bring Your Own Technology in our high schools, and we also have a New Tech Academy in both of our high schools. We just launched Bingle Tech this fall. We had a grand opening last night for the new learning space, and we have Warrior Tech at Magna Vista High School, and they have one-to-one MacBook Airs. At full capacity, we'll have 400 students in each of those programs, and I'll be glad to talk more about that as we go along. Some challenges that we're facing: data security, obviously. We're working through that with all of the devices. We've been struggling with internet access outside of school. The reason we started with iPads is because the students could use the apps without internet. We've surveyed our families, and close to 80% say they have internet access, but what we've learned is a lot of that's from a smartphone, not from internet access at home. Even though we have $9.99 a month reduced rate for internet, we still have families that do not take advantage of that. So we're trying to come up with creative ways to provide access at home. We've even looked at having students check out MiFis to have access. So we're trying to, we've even talked about putting them on the buses, and I know others have talked about that too. But good luck with that in Henry County. We're so spread out that it may not help. We've also, we need to work on infrastructure. We are on the cutting edge of as early as next year, we could be one-to-one K-12. And what we've learned is we can take all of our leases and combine those to get to one-to-one K-12, but my IT director is saying, hold on, I don't think we can support that. So we're working on infrastructure. That's going to be important. And of course, a big thing that I've had to work on over the last couple of years is sustainability. Because when we initially bought devices, we used year-end money or carryover funds, and I'm building it into the budget to make sure that we have guaranteed funds each year, and that's been a budget priority. So essentially, you need to you need to start from scratch and build your budget around this important priority. So we're continuing to work on that. Some great opportunities, this is what I'll close with, is increased professional development. We've had to reinvest in the SAMR model to make sure our school building administrators and teachers really have a good understanding of the SAMR model, which we've used to help us ramp up our instructional practices. Our engaging curriculum, which I would say we revised it, which isn't true. We started over and created a new curriculum, which is all about performance-based assessment, integrating technology, assessing those 4 C's, and of course the opportunity to be one-to-one. We're expanding online courses, personalized learning, which we'll probably not call it personalized learning. What we've learned is there's a lot of misunderstanding about what that means. And OERs, of course. I said, well, next year, let's do K-12 history, all digital. And everybody almost passed out. And then I realized maybe we shouldn't do it K-12. Let's maybe start in middle school. So that's something we're working on. We still don't have a consistent learning management system that all teachers are using. Many are using Edmodo and Moodle, and we need to get everybody moving in that same direction. And we're moving towards digital portfolios. So we have a lot of great things on the horizon. We're piloting personalized learning at the alternative school right now, and we've only been in school for 2 months, and it is incredible how the students have responded. So I'll be glad to talk more about that later, but glad to be here.
Great, thank you, Dr. Cotton. That was lots of things for us. I think you only has one slide. Lots of things to talk about. Our next presenter is Bobby Keener, the Chief Technology Innovation Officer from the Virginia Department of Ed. And let me get back to there we go. Great.
Hi, I'm not a slides guy, as was stated. My name is Bobby Keener, Chief Technology Innovations Officer with the Department of Education. As kind of co-sponsors of this event, would like to welcome everyone, really appreciate everyone coming out. We're so happy to be here, and we appreciate you having us as well. We have a few folks from the Department of Education that are in the room. Please feel free to ask them questions. I'm sure that they will ask you questions as well. Persons from the Department of Education, you mind standing up so folks can see where you're at in case they do want to ask questions? That would be great. In the table in the back and up front, Susan here. So yeah, y'all can clap if you want to. They're good people. They're doing a lot of exciting things, as well as myself, hopefully doing a lot of exciting things. The Department of Education in general, one of the things, I've been there give or take about a year now. Do not classically come from an education background. I have worked with education department. I've taught in VCU master's course, but by no means does that qualify me to put myself in the same boat as those folks that are out here that have been here for a long time. Nonetheless, what I have seen since I've been there is a continuing goal of providing leadership on those critical elements that are very difficult for a lot of the divisions on their own to necessarily handle. That doesn't mean there's not a lot of great things happening in the divisions. I can tell you, just even in Henry County, the Warrior Academy, the things they're doing with the digital textbooks, many other places across the state, the things that are happening are amazing. All we're trying to do is bubble those things up, bubble the things up that are happening on the national level. Again, provide leadership to those that find it difficult to have the bandwidth, the funds, whatever it might be, to do it on their own and help them with it. Excuse me. So, as we go through today, I noticed that my name is on a lot of sessions today. So, and there will be other people besides me in those sessions, I surely hope at least. So as we go through today, we'll talk about a lot of those things that we're working on, but I did want to mention a few of them just to kind of show that leadership that we're having. We have the K through 12 Learning Infrastructure Program, which is about E-rate, and not just about E-rate, but also make sure that folks are understanding why the plumbing, as was mentioned, is needed. Excuse me again. The next one that just came out is Student-Led Ideation Challenge, and that's about, and I completely understand what Jared's saying about personalized learning. But the idea behind that is that students can look and work with real-world things, real-world problems, and come up with ideas and share those ideas and have control over the possible solutions that they might come up with. Another one, Go Open VA. As you saw up there, open education resources, which are free resources that can be modified, used, packaged together in different ways so that you can not only support courses that are out there today, but you can create new courses and you can support the learning goals, the learning that our students can have. Computer science, we're coming up with the standards around that. We have things in our career in tech which are going to be pathways into that as well, and integrate that into the various classes that are being taught. Excuse me. Also within our CTE, we're really certifications, whether Microsoft is the big one, but we're looking at a number of different ways that students can actually do certifications and come out and have that chance to be not just college ready, but also career ready, and maybe when they're in college they can earn a few bucks. Maybe they just get a few credits along the way in high school. Maybe they just have that general base of knowledge. Security is a great example. We all need to know security. It doesn't matter if you go into the security field or not. You need to understand that. So they're doing a great job with that. Cyber summer camps that we had are great examples. Other things as well, we'll talk about ESSA today some, Virtual Virginia, the ed tech folks within the agency doing a great job there, really making that, it's been meaningful, but they're making it even more meaningful, and they're modernizing it on a daily basis. So a lot of things, but the key to all of it really, in my mind, is sustainability. We can do great things. All of us in this room can do great things. Us up here, we can do great things. But if it's not sustainable, if it happens because one person leads it and that person goes away, and the program, the efforts, they all go away with it, then what have we really accomplished? So the one thing that we're trying to do in the Department of Education, and I encourage everyone, and I know folks are doing it already anyway, is to make sure that as you're looking at these things you're doing out there, make sure that they can live beyond you, beyond just the couple of people that are working on them now. Get people involved. Make sure that everyone buys in. What we're going through in education right now is really a culture shift. That's what I see when I look on the national scale, when I look internally as well. And the culture shift is going from the teaching model to the learning model. And as we make that culture shift, we got to make sure everyone has an opinion. Everyone does have an opinion. We need to make sure that all those opinions are taken into account. All that, it's the stakeholder theory, right? Many stakeholders out there, we need to understand who they are, what their needs are, make sure that we accommodate them and we bring them along, we don't leave them behind. Because if we do, then what we're going to create is we're going to create silos in a different way than we have today is all we'll end up with. So all that being said, I invite you to go out and come to the sessions, but also go out to the Department of Education website, look up things like Profile of a Graduate, which wraps all this up. We call it the 5 C's because we had citizenship, which was mentioned, but that's the 5th C that we have as well. But look at what we're doing. I think we're doing some great things. I hope that we're meeting the needs of the community, and please let us know if we are. Let us know if we're not, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help. And it doesn't always seem that way, but we really are. So please provide us any feedback you have. Thanks.
Thanks, Bobby. And our final opening presenter is Larry Shiflett from Rockingham County School District. Let me pull up your slide.
Good morning. Sorry about that. Just a quick snapshot of what Rockingham County looks like. If you're not familiar, Rockingham County is located in the Shenandoah Valley. It is the 3rd largest geographic county in Virginia, so it's pretty large acreage-wise. It's a rural division in most parts, a lot of suburbs. Harrisonburg City is in the center, if you will, of Rockingham County, served as a county seat. We have 15 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, 4 high schools, an alternative education center, and Massanutten Technical Center. We have over 11,000 students pre-K to 12th grade. We have about 37% of our students receive free or reduced lunch, and 11 of our elementary schools receive Title I funding, and we have over 1,800 full-time employees. So that's sort of kind of what we look like, just some basic demographics. As far as where we are and where we're going in terms of our digital initiative, we have the roadmap on the screen for you. And part of that, I'm going to kind of talk to you about where we started, how we started, and our direction and where we hope to be. But a couple of things I want to highlight is first and foremost, this is a learning initiative for Rockingham County Public Schools. This is not a technology initiative. And I sat up here on this stage, and I am not from the technology department. I am from the learning department, the instructional department. When we began this initiative in earnest, our technology supervisor, Kevin Perkins, who's here today, and our director of information management, Oscar Scheikel, who were instrumental in building this roadmap, said, if this is going to truly be a learning initiative, then we need someone at the table who's going to lead the instructional part of that, the learning part of that. And so they created this position, Director of Innovation and Learning, and I've been serving in that capacity for 2 years. And our whole focus is we're trying to provide resources for students to enhance, to increase student engagement for the outcomes of learning, so not for technology itself. Also, I would say that our process has been very slow and steady. We're not in a hurry so we can get some press to say every student has this device or that device. We're going at it very calculated in our approach. And this started a number of years ago when our Board of Supervisors said to our school board, when are you guys going to start getting electronic textbooks, digital textbooks, and stop asking for textbook money? And so the school board approached Oscar and Kevin and said, come up with some type of proposal we can take to the Board of Supervisors. And they basically said to them, dream big. Go big or go home, basically. So let's think of something big. And so they created what, again, this 5-year plan. And the Board of Supervisors had buy-in. So when it comes to this idea of sustainability, our Board of Supervisors a number of years ago, after the school budget for that year, 2013, was approved, they said, come to us after the budget has been solidified for this school year, and we're going to talk about building some extra dollars into our budget to sustain this digital conversion initiative. And so that's what we were able to do through a lot of meetings, a lot of buy-in from the Board of Supervisor members. We had one-on-one meetings with some of them. We had several presentations to get them on board, and now they're fully supported. And so what we have is this 5-year plan. Is our goal is by the end of year 5, we'll have one-to-one rollout in grades 3 through 12 for all of our students. And we started in year 1 with building infrastructure at just our middle schools, because we knew research had told us if this was going to be successful, infrastructure had to be in place. We've read the horror stories of those school districts who went out and purchased this or that, didn't have the infrastructure in place, and all students see is that spinning wheel of death, and people just check out and they say, hey, we're not into this. So we built infrastructure. We also had plans to increase our support staff. Our goal at the end of year 5, we'll have one ITRT per school to provide assistance for our teachers as we move in this direction. Additional technicians were part of that. And the other piece that we did, which I'm really proud of Rockingham County, for years 1 and 2, we did pilots in our middle schools where all we did is we selected teachers. They submitted proposals. We selected teachers to study various devices. We looked at the MacBooks, we looked at the Chromebooks, we looked at the iPads, and our goal was at what device is really cool and neat. We said, what device can best meet our learning needs? If this is a learning initiative, then let's look at this from an instructional standpoint. Which device will best get us what we want? And then in year 2, we kind of continued with those pilots at the middle school, but we also did that at the high school. So we added more pilots. We upgraded our high school infrastructure. And then at the end of year 2, we brought all of those folks together. It was probably 40 people in the room. ITRTs, the pilot teachers, and we spent a full day just talking about what these devices could and could not do, what were their limitations, what were the benefits, and at the end of the day, we said, okay, let's go with the Lenovo Chromebook touchscreen, and so that's what we decided to purchase. So this year, beginning year 3, we gave devices to all of our middle school and high school teachers. And in the week of November the 14th, we plan to roll out devices to our middle school students. So that will be the first time. So this is year 3, and we're just getting around to putting devices in the students' hands. But it's been very slow, very steady. And a part of our mindset has been, let's plant this seed, let's nurture it, and let's watch it grow. And let's work together, build capacity. Another part of our initiative has been professional development, ongoing PD, and part of our budget has been each year $100,000 set aside for professional development just for digital conversion. So the last 2 years, I guess this will be year 3, we have sent 50 plus teachers to the VSTE conference. And we've offered numerous graduate level courses for our teachers. We've taught a course for our administrators on digital age leadership. So providing opportunities for professional development is ongoing and not just, in one particular year. Next year, year 4, we will put devices in the hands of high school students. And then hopefully in year 5, we'll make a decision for our elementary students and begin to put devices in their hands. So that's kind of where we're going with this initiative, trying to change. I heard you speak about the culture of education. I think, the focus needs to be on learning. So often over the years, we talked about teaching and what are the teachers doing, but we need to kind of shift the paradigm and talk about what are the students learning. And really not just to put devices in the hands of students for them to consume information, because reading a textbook, whether it's paper or on a screen, really isn't much different from a learning perspective. What we want is to give students the tools where they can be creative and construct their own knowledge and give them the power. And the last thing I guess I will say just from the learning standpoint is technology. This is an awesome tool. It's not just a tool. It's very powerful. But this is about learning. And if you have a very effective, very engaging teacher and you allow them to have this access, the technology will magnify what is happening in that classroom. You'll see better instruction, more engagement, higher student achievement. However, the same is true if you have a teacher who's struggling and they're not grounded in good instructional practices. The technology will magnify their inefficiencies. And so this is a magnifier we're bringing to the table. It's not a panacea. It's not going to fix all of our woes, but it's a very powerful tool that I feel gives us the capability of preparing our students for the 21st century. And we talk about the 4 C's, 5 C's. I think, however you look at it, I think that's where we're going.
Thanks, Larry. That was very helpful. And I really appreciate all of the concise kind of insights that each of the panelists have provided. We want to make this pretty interactive, so jump in and contribute. I want to focus the conversation initially on what's different about today, particularly for you and your job, or for Dr. Cotton, what's different for all superintendents, what's different for the kind of people you want as leading your technology. Is it the same today that you're looking for that you were looking for in the past? And I'm going to pull up a screen. Actually, I'm going to pull up this screen. We do a empowered superintendents initiative, and in fact, I'll be presenting with Dr. Cotton's colleagues from Henrico and Chesterfield in just 2 weeks. And what I'm showing here is kind of the message of the panel, which is that we need to focus on the learning side. So I'm kind of curious, has there been any shift from your perspective, Dr. Cotton?
Certainly, if we're looking for the 4 C's to be developed in our students, then certainly we want staff that can exhibit the 4 C's. So one of the first things that we did was we incorporated the 4 C's into our recruiting materials as well as teacher evaluation instruments, so that we're trying to really look for the kind of professionals who can encourage this type of learning. But also it's really changed the way that, one of the things that I've said many times is the easiest thing to do is to buy the technology, and people will say, well, no, it's not, it's expensive. But one of the things I've learned where we've heard about many situations that have failed is we've just purchased the technology and thought that we were good to go. And the mindset didn't change. And I appreciate what Larry was saying about changing that mindset and technology being the magnifier in that particular situation. So I've had to really come through the lens of the learner perspective and what is it that we want technology to do that's different When I go to the Apple, I've been blessed. I've been able to go to the Apple mothership a couple times. We had a study tour in Cupertino, and they were showing us all these things, and I was just so excited and blown away. And I thought, all these things are just amazing. But then I was left thinking, how is teaching going to change? How is the teacher's role going to change? The teachers become more of a facilitator, as you all know. And then I would agree that I've had to look at technology staffing differently. We do have a director of digital learning and innovation, and we have a director of IT. I've separated those two. It used to be all of them were under one person, but that instructional link has to be in place. It may sound ridiculous, but there are times when the technology department made purchases or made decisions without input from end users.
No.
You all don't know anything about that, I'm sure, but we've had a few situations where, and it may seem like a small thing, but it's a huge thing. We made decisions about which device to purchase for our teachers without getting enough input from them. And when they got the device, they had issues and complaints. We made decisions without bringing students to the table. So it's really changed the way that we do things. I was in an instructional meeting just yesterday, and my assistant superintendent for teaching and learning, she already told her staff, she said, you can share all these great ideas, but Dr. Cotton's going to ask you two things. What do the teachers think about it? What do the students think about it? So we constantly bring that back to the table where that wasn't the case before. So the other thing that we think about is sustainability. We bought as many devices as we could with year-end funds, but that's not sustainable. In the next few years, every device will be on a lease so that we have a built-in replacement cycle, and that means that we have to commit to that. Our Board of Supervisors supported us as well, but they said, we're going to give you one-time money to buy some devices, which was great, but we need to sustain that. You don't keep an iPad for 5 years and hope for the best. So you need to work that in. So, but I also would say that it's all grounded in instruction, and we have to make that link with the instructional staff. And with that position now, I have very close communication with the IT department and the instructional department. I hope that gets at some of what you're talking
Great.
about.
Yeah, and Bobby and Larry, maybe you could tell your own personal journey to start off with, and kind of how did you get in the position that you're at? What is your background, more technical or educational, and how do you see the evolution of the skills needed?
Well, my original job, if you will, way back when I worked growing up, I'll tell you, and I've said this many times when I've spoken in front of folks, I did not enjoy school. In fact, I use the word hate sometimes, but that might be too strong of a word for the audience. Not too strong for me, though. And the reason I didn't enjoy it at all was quite just because of what we're talking about. It was about teaching. It wasn't about learning. It was all about teaching. And I loved reading textbooks. I was that weird kid who did that, but I didn't like sitting in a class and going over the same thing I'd read. I wanted to do something, whether it was implement something that, had to do with what I read, or get in a group and talk about it, or whatever it might have been. So, I was into, again, I don't know what the moniker will be long term, but I was into personalized learning way before others were for myself, and it didn't work out so well for me, but at times. But nonetheless, that's kind of where my background was. So I worked a lot as a kid because I learned a lot that way. And my dad owned a body shop. I worked in there. I saw how he did estimates. I saw how he did the work on the cars. I saw how he dealt with people. I saw all of that. And one of the great lessons he told me, for instance, is he said, hey, I've got this one body shop. I could have 3 or 4 of them in the city if I wanted to. Hickory, North Carolina, by the way, so smaller city, but nonetheless, said I could have had 3 or 4, but I didn't know how to step back and look at the bigger picture. And so that was a great lesson for me, and ended up going into the military. I learned a lot of leadership lessons there. Air Assault Light Infantry, I hope everyone likes the military. And after I got out, I really just kind of started looking around to start a business, got into technology there, had already been doing some things, but everything I did throughout, the one key, and I think Jared hit on it really well, is I always looked and said, what does the business need? What do the stakeholders need? What am I trying to achieve for the people at the end result? Because if you don't get it to your customer. And customer is, there's a lot of customers out there, but in our case, the students are our customers, let's be honest. If you don't get it, if you're not meeting those needs, then what's the point? And as we try to meet those needs, the other thing that I found is it's not just about the, you know, whether it's the CAO in your organizations or your other leadership or whoever talking to you as technology leadership or innovation leadership or whoever it might be. It's also about you going out there and seeking it out. Sometimes we sit back and we wait and go, hey, they're not talking to us. Well, you know what? That's how it is. Okay, let's just face the facts. A lot of times that's how it is. We need to go out and make sure that we are driving some of that conversation, not necessarily towards the business goal, but driving them to actually have the conversation with us. So I always thought that was really great, and stay connected to that. But I've worked in nonprofit sector. Back before that, I was in the public sector, the private sector. I was gun for hire. I was software developer, software engineer, maybe sounds better. Did a lot of different stuff, but had my daughter and came in and said, you know what, this was 15 and a half years ago, my wife got pregnant and went, I think it's probably a good idea to try to look around and give back. Went into the nonprofit sector and been in the public sector for about 10 years now. I've worked for our state IT agency, been at the Department of Education about a year, and again, the last thing I'll just kind of wrap it up with is the one thing I found is that, you know, we all think that we're different. We all think that, you know, the public sector is different from the private sector and that education is different from this. And the reality is how you approach things is really the same across the board. And I think when we talk about the 5 C's, when we talk about all these things, those are not things that are only applicable to education, right? They're applicable to anything you do in life. And that's why we're trying to teach our students these things, because they're not all going into the education sector, right? They're going whatever sector they may end up in. So that's what I found in my journeys is that, you know, whether you're building a deck or whether you're writing a program or whatever it may be that you're doing, those lessons that you learn, if you learn them the right way, it's not about rote memorization. It's not about any of these things. It's about thinking. It's about thinking your way through it. It's about the ability to get from point A to point Z, wherever point A is and wherever point Z is that you're trying to get to. And hopefully I've learned some of those lessons. From the panel, I know that these folks have learned those lessons. From talking to you guys, I know you've learned those lessons. How do we get those lessons into our students? That's kind of the next phase of my journey, if you will.
I guess my journey is that of a classroom teacher to assistant principal to an elementary school principal for a number of years. And, you know, I would have to say I agree with Bobby. As a student, I loathed school. And when my former teachers learned that I was going to become a teacher, in some cases I became their supervisor later on in years, they really couldn't believe it. And I can't probably believe it myself, but I feel like I have an opportunity now with this current culture to make a change on what school is, what it looks like, what it feels like. And so I think one of the things as far as skill sets is trying to help teachers feel comfortable in taking risk. And right now, I think that's one of our biggest challenges is getting teachers to take risk with trying some new things with the technology. But at the same time, in the back of their mind, there's this thing called accountability. And so how do you balance those two? Get teachers to step outside of that box and do something new, and maybe it will not work, but what did you learn from it? How can you move forward? How can you take that and build something positive? And again, the other piece too, I think, is we're moving in, you know, well into the 21st century now, is building skills. I teach adjunct courses at James Madison University, and I often just have conversations with my students about, you know, you're 2 or 3 years removed from high school. How did your high school education, your middle school education, how did it serve you? Where are you missing? What things did they do well? And one of the things I hear them say often is, we need more skills, because content is in your pocket. Pull out your smartphone and you can look up the capital of Georgia if you're standing there at Atlanta and you don't know what it is. But as Bobby was saying, to be able to problem solve and think critically, those are the skills that we need to give to our students, because that's the world in which they're going to have to try to become productive citizens. So I think as we look, you know, as far as staff development, hiring folks, what is it we're trying to do? We want folks who are willing to take risk and to give students the skills that they need for the 21st century.
Thanks. And I thought, the interesting thing when we look kind of nationally of who's in charge of technology in school districts around the country, about half of them say they have an educational background like you do, Larry. Another 42% come with more of a technical background. And then the last kind of 8% are a mixture kind of from military or maybe a business degree. So no one kind of comes in with all of the skills we think are necessary to succeed, which is why I pulled up the framework of essential skills, because if we're really going to provide value to people like Dr. Cotton, we need to really understand the leadership and vision. We need to understand the educational environment, and we really have to understand the technology. So I want to pivot to a really challenging question, and that is how we learn from our mistakes. One of the things that we've done at the COSN conference, which will be coming up in April, is about 3 years ago, we started what we call a Fail Fest. It's not about honoring failure, but rather how do we learn and iterate and improve things based on things that we tried that didn't work. And sometimes we go to conferences like this or the COSN conference, and it's kind of like, the magic tablets came down from heaven. We had the perfect idea, and it all ended up nice, shiny, and bright, exactly as our presentation says. But that's really not the messiness of how we get to really improve things. So I'm kind of curious, and the reason I'm talking a little bit is to give everybody a little chance, because they haven't heard this question. Is there anything that you kind of tried that was a failure, and yet you built on that to learn something better?
How much time do we have? Oh, boy. It's hard to think of one particular, but there's just some things that I've learned with technology over the years that, I started out as a fifth grade teacher, then I was a technology specialist. I trained teachers to use technology in the classroom for a couple of years before I went into administration. But one of the things one of the mistakes that we make, and of course I used to work in Virginia Beach and prior to going to Henry County, is sometimes we purchase technology and as I've said earlier, we assume that everyone's ready to use it and excited to use it. We did purchase, of course I wasn't in the technology department at the time, I was in the accountability department, which is far more interesting. Being in charge of research, evaluation, and assessment, all those good things. But we did purchase smart boards for all of the teachers, all in one swoop, using year-end funds. And what we found was not everybody was excited about getting a smart board, as we thought, and not everybody was using it well into the year, which was interesting. When I got to Henry County, what I noticed was not everybody had a smart board when I got there. And I said, why don't we all have smart boards? Well, number one, we don't have funds for everybody to have a smart board. But the other thing was the teachers had to write grants in order to get a smart board in their classroom. So do you see the difference? They had to ask for it and want it and say that they were going to use it effectively in their classroom. And that was a way to slowly get the smart boards. And the funny thing that happened was the students started asking for the technology. They would go to the teacher and say, how come you don't have a smart board when the other teacher does? It'd be so much easier if you had a smart board. And that put pressure on the teachers, and then they applied. And we're at the point now where every elementary and middle school teacher has a smart board. And at the high school level, of course, you all are probably thinking, why are you investing in smart boards? Exactly. At the high school level, we're investing in Apple TVs, and teachers are writing grants to get Apple TVs. And what I've learned is if you start to create that excitement, before we started writing the grants, we did an exabyte challenge where teachers can turn in a technology-rich lesson plan and win an Apple TV. But again, it was just a very different approach than here's your Apple TV. And what I've learned is that it's contagious. And when you do that kind of thing, people get excited about using the technology, and it spreads like a virus, which we like. And I guess that would be my example of something that I've learned. And And since that experience, I have not purchased technology for everybody, but part of the reason is I can't afford to. But on the flip side, teachers who really want to use it become the early adopters, and that really changes the mindset.
Yeah, real quick before I tell you about how I failed, I just want to reemphasize what was being said there. I was listening to a thing on, it was an NPR or something when I was driving the other day, and they were talking about the idea of ideas. And while innovation is, as a good friend of mine will say, is ideas into action, nonetheless, ideas have to happen before the action does. And having the ideas and talking about them and talking about what you're working on as you're getting towards that action and building up that buzz, and I love the concept of buzz, really helps, because what that does a lot of times is it gets the culture to come along with you and get interested in it before you say, now you have to do it. So that's, you know, it brings them to it versus you taking it to them, which is a big paradigm shift in a lot of ways. That being said, one of the great lessons I learned in my life was when I did come to Virginia and I started a business with 2 other folks, and this was 20 years ago, and we did these things, we were doing these things called web pages. Maybe a little too soon, but it was obviously, you know, something that happened and went big, but that wasn't even the problem. The problem was that there were 3 of us primarily, and we really had a hard time settling on what our vision was. So we didn't have a common shared vision, shared goals, and how we were taking the business forward. And the reason I think that's really important is because as we go and take these initiatives, whether it be at the Department of Education, whether it be in your division, or whether it be within a unit within your division, the idea that you have a shared vision that everyone's working towards, even if you're different people doing different things, different ways, everyone should be working towards that common vision and those common goals, and everybody should be able to align themselves from, you know, the person on the bottom of the org chart to the person on the top of the org chart and the goals that are up there. And if you can't align yourself, if you don't see where you fit in to the larger organization and what they're trying to achieve and how they're trying to achieve it and what's happening, if you don't feel like you're a part of that, yeah, you can get your job done, but you're not going to get it done in the way that's really going to make substantial change. So that's the one thing that I really learned, and I'm a big fan of ensuring that everything I do, that I'm aligning with the greater goals, with the greater needs that the organization is out there trying to achieve, because if I'm not, I'm a rogue player. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do innovative things and do things differently and align with those things. I pride myself on being that way. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, if you are so rogue that you're disconnected, again, back to sustainability, back to all those things, it will not work in the end. You must have some kind of connection up to the top. And even if that connection is simply that, hey, you're going to be the guy who does something differently, and that's how they express it. But it's got to line up, and you got to have that shared vision and work together.
Similar to Dr. Cotton, I would say the experience firsthand as far as failure goes, realizing that just providing the technology to teachers without the PD doesn't sustain change in your classroom. So when I was a principal at South River Elementary School, I used monies and did this and that and the other to put a smart board in every classroom, because I thought that was, you know, the wave of the future. And my teachers would say to me, yes, we're using the smart board, and I would go in their classrooms, and sure enough, they were projecting their laptop or their document camera on the smart board. And I said, that's a really expensive projector screen that I purchased for you, but they really weren't using it the way it was meant to be used. And so I learned a lesson then that if we're going to do some of these new initiatives, there's got to be some really sustainable professional development, and part of our plan has included that. And I also kind of like what Dr. Cotton said about this idea of, you know, you get 2 or 3 teachers in a building and they're doing really great things, they're going to start talking about that in the teacher lounge or the teacher workroom, and other teachers will want to grasp onto that. And I think I would say finally, just as far as this idea of taking risk, I think the collaboration between teachers, some of our schools have technology teams where each teacher is on a technology team of some sorts, and they collaborate, and they have weekly meetings and bi-weekly meetings where they talk about how they're using technology. Some of our elementary schools have technology buddies where a 5th grade teacher is paired with a 3rd grade teacher, and that gives them a safe place to talk about their failures in the classroom, what went wrong, and how they could fix it. Because the idea is, you know, we just don't want to it's not just trial and error, it's trial and learn. And so we want to make all those experiences, whatever they are, we want to make them learning experiences, not just for students, but also for our teachers.
Yeah, and real quick, I'm a big fan of not using the term failure, even though I have, when it comes to these things, because the reality is and both gentlemen put it quite well, is that it's about lessons learned. It's bumps in the road, it's lessons learned, it's whatever you want to call it. Failure is when you do something that actually negatively impacts and you don't take anything forward from it. The reality is that what we call failure really is just kind of, I think someone mentioned iteration. It's just the first step in a longer process. So and you know, every project everyone's worked on wasn't perfect. You had something that didn't go perfect. I wouldn't call those projects failures. And it's the same thing when you're talking about the bigger picture. They're not really, even though we use that term, it's not really failures. It's just the first step. Failure is when you stop and you don't really get it to where it needs to be and really grab that great value. But it takes time and work.
Great advice. So let's give the panel a round of applause.
Thank you so much. I hate to be the bad guy because I think we could continue this for probably another hour or so, but the big clock on that interactive whiteboard over there is showing us that it's 10 o'clock. So just a couple things. First of all, I really want to tweet out that trial and learn. So I know there's a couple tweeters out in the room along with me. The hashtag for today is pretty simple, hashtag VSTE, VSTE. So if you are tweeting, go ahead and do that. And let's see, I wrote some notes for myself. You know, as you get older, you can't hold as much in your head as you used to. We are doing some streaming and archiving of sessions, so a shout out to Josh Long and Mike George from Fredericksburg City who are here. We streamed this session and then we'll have the archive for it, and I think they may be doing a couple other sessions, maybe? Yeah, sounds good, all right. They brought up their stuff from Fredericksburg City. I don't want to neglect the folks around the edges of the room here. You're seeing a representation of VSTE's corporate partners. This is a new program for us. These are the folks who support us not just at the conference, but support our work throughout the year. We could not have events like this without their support. So give them a big wave. Hey, everybody. And please take some time to talk to them. Some of them have identified general categories or general topics that they would love to talk to you about at lunchtime. So when you come back in this room for lunch, you'll see little table topics, and you might want to go and sit and chat with them about those things like cybersecurity and infrastructure and so on and so forth. But please take some time to talk to them today because we're so excited that they're here with us. On your name tag, you had a little ticket that had your name on it that said door prize tickets. We do have several prizes to give away at lunchtime. If you rip that off, there's some green M&M buckets in the back that my able event assistant Joan is holding up. You can just dump those right in there as you head out to your next session, and we'll collect them at lunchtime as well. And then finally, most of our breakout sessions are here on the first floor, either in this room, 2 rooms on the back side of here, 104B and C. 123 is right across the hall, and then I'm not going to guess at the room number, 2 something, obviously the second floor. So just flip your schedule over and there's a map on the back, the restrooms are noted, and all those sorts of things. So let's do one more thank you to our panel. I know you probably had questions for them that we didn't get to. They'll be floating around today, so please grab them and ask them questions about what's going on, share what you're doing. Our next session starts at 10:15. Please grab some coffee and food on your way to that next session if you would. I'd appreciate that. We'll be back here at lunchtime. Thanks so much for coming, folks.
Yeah, we'll see you on day. You're going to be here, right?
Yeah, I'll be around.
I just heard you in something recently.
Oh, okay. And will you be in Charlottesville for the superintendent's meeting in 2 weeks?
Yes.
So we'll see you there.
Thank you so much. That was just